Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to the Charles Aris Industry Uncovered podcast. This is some content that we produce focusing on emerging technologies in the ag tech space, and we're just welcoming Cara Wells today. She is the founder and CEO of EmGenisys. Cara and I had the pleasure of talking a couple of weeks ago and has a fascinating story here. So, Cara, if you don't mind, give us a brief introduction to our audience.
Thank you so much, Eric. Absolutely. So it's really ironic and I think happenstance that I get to work in this amazing industry of agriculture today because, you know, 30 years ago, that probably was not my trajectory. But as a young child, I grew up outside of Houston in the suburbs. Both my parents are oil and gas engineers. And sure, they appreciated agriculture, but I certainly did not grow up on a ranch or on a farm. And I don't really know what happened if I watched a horse movie or read horse books, but I became absolutely fascinated with horses when I was in about elementary school, and I started taking riding lessons when I was 8 years old. After that, I was absolutely hooked, and I begged my parents to buy me a horse. And when I was 12 years old, they bought me a yearling horse that I actually got to train and ride myself. As I, got more and more involved in the horse business in middle school, high school, I started getting involved in 4 H and I absolutely loved it. And I say this because I thought that owning a horse made me an ag kid. And I was just, ranching outside of Houston, Texas with my horse. And I absolutely thought that I loved that lifestyle. I loved that industry. And so I did decide that I wanted to pursue it professionally. But at the time, when you looked at careers with horses, it's like, okay, you can be a veterinarian, you can be a trainer, you can be a farrier. And I really was not exposed to what all else was out there. And so I decided that I like science, I like health, I like medicine. I'm going to be a large animal veterinarian. I started Texas Tech Animal Science in Lubbock, Texas in 2009. And all of a sudden I was like, whoa, I am not the ag kid. Some of these kids grew up on feedlots, on ranches, and, they really walk the walk and talk the talk. And so I was like, all right, this is a little different than what I expected. And started taking animal science classes. And at first, I was like, whoa, you want me to take carcass evaluation? Like, I want to be a vet to save animals and not eat them. But the more I got into my education, the more I thought it was fascinating. And the more I began to appreciate the hard work that goes into raising animals that become our food. I still had aspirations to be a veterinarian, and getting into veterinary school is very challenging. And so I was looking for something to set me apart, and that something ended up being undergraduate research. There were not a lot of professors that, took undergraduates into their lab. That was typically reserved towards grad students. So I took the first professor that would take me, which ended up being a assisted reproduction lab studying assisted reproductive techniques in both animals and in humans, like IVF and embryo transfer. Turns out that I loved the science. I got to go on a couple of research trips doing, research projects on horse semen, bull semen, cattle embryos. And what I loved about the breeding animal industry is that these breeding animals are impeccably taken care of. They're vaccinated, they have nutritionists, they have really great, animal health schedules. And I thought it was kind of a happier side of the animal health industry. And I decided to forego vet school and pursue a PhD in reproductive physiology instead. So that upgrowing with horses led me here. And I absolutely love working in ag tech now.
That's awesome. And it's awesome to hear non-traditional entry points into agriculture. So tell us about EmGenisys and how that came to be.
Sure. So, I told you I thought the science of assisted reproductive techniques, IVF, was absolutely fascinating. And as both an undergraduate and a graduate student, I became aware that Methods to evaluate embryos really haven't changed since we first started doing IVF back in the 70s and 80s. The current method is just the embryologist looking at the embryos under a microscope and grading them based off of visually apparent characteristics. And that method, it really allowed us to grow this industry. It took us from experimental to, sometimes a routine way to breed animals. But the reality is, pregnancy rates are still far from perfect. Typically, they're less than 50%. And a lot of these challenges are evaluating these embryos. So, I did my PhD studying objective ways to assess embryo health in real time. My PhD research was largely mice studies, which are important. It helped give data, but there's really no economic impact in that. But the interesting thing about my PhD was I had peers in the animal science college, and I would be talking about the research that I was doing on mice. And, my peer with a cattle ranch or, a sheep farm was like, hey, my veterinarian's going to be out, on Tuesday transferring embryos. Why don't you come use your little device on them and see, what the outcome was? And so my PhD research was not the technology that we use at EmGenisys, but what I realized during my friends allowing me to experiment on their embryos, they weren't trying to help me graduate. They weren't doing this because they liked me. They were doing this because there was a clear need for new technologies to evaluate embryos with the goal of selecting the best embryos to improve pregnancy outcomes of IVF and embryo transfer. And my friends taking a chance on me on these technologies on their dollar is what started getting the entrepreneurship wheels kind of going. I graduated with my PhD in 2017, and I wasn't really sure what to do next. I was so focused on having fun, loving learning, and loving the science that I wasn't really sure where I was going to take this as a career. And unfortunately, there were not a lot of job opportunities for a very specialized niche skill set in reproductive physiology like I had. So I ended up doing human IVF in Austin, Texas, and it was meaningful work, but I just didn't really feel like I was solving problems. I was like, I just spent the past 7 years of my life understanding
Mm.
embryo development. How do I really create something that's innovative and scalable to address these problems? And in these experiences, I had enough opportunities to go to farms to realize that any product that we created didn't just have to work, but it had to be practical and affordable for the livestock industry. I shadowed enough vets trying to get into vet school when that was my goal to know that they work out of the back of a pickup. So whatever we do needs to be able to go down a bumpy road to that farm and work within the constraints of those businesses. So EmGenisys was formed in 2020 when advancements in imaging technologies, so like the cameras in your iPhone or your Android, and machine learning and artificial intelligence technologies were kind of coming to a head. I was like, hey, look, everyone who works with embryos has a great camera in their pocket and they should own a microscope. What would happen if we applied machine learning to 30-second videos of embryos captured on their smartphone mounted to their microscope? Could we see things in these embryos that are not perceptible to the human eye? So 5 years of collecting data, training machine learning models, and growing this business. EmGenisys today is a software company that sells solutions to evaluate embryo health in real time with just your phone mounted to a microscope.
Wow. So maybe tell us a little bit where you're at in the stage of development and how you're going to market, Cara.
Absolutely. So in the early days, this was just an idea. I thought that perhaps analyzing these videos of embryos could result in better predictive outcomes of that embryo's viability and likelihood to make a pregnancy, but we weren't sure. So I needed data to solve this. I certainly did not have the means to make and transfer embryos myself. And I realized that the cattle market had a great opportunity to be the first target for a product like this. So I started partnering with veterinarians and livestock embryologists who, in their routine day-to-day work, would capture videos of embryos, transfer them, and then we would use the ultrasound or pregnancy data from those animals to say, yes, no, this embryo made a pregnancy, and use those outcomes to train our models. So year 1, 2, and 3, we were really toggling along, getting a couple hundred, a couple thousand videos a year. And we were able to use that to slowly establish proof of concept, but the product didn't have a user interface where people could use this easily, and it wasn't the accuracy to go to market. But over time, we ended up collecting 30,000 and then 40,000, then 50,000 videos of these embryos. And we got the predictive power that we needed to very confidently and accurately say, yes, this embryo has a good chance of making a pregnancy, or this embryo has a no to low chance of making a pregnancy. So that's when we started building a web-based platform. So the product that our users interface with is just a website, EmGenisys.app, where users can upload these videos. The machine learning runs in the background, and then we produce a embryo health score from 0 to 100 with that embryo's likelihood of making a pregnancy. We were able to launch this product at the International Embryo Technology Society in January this year, and have been working our way through the phases of product launch in the past several months.
Well, I'm interested as a new CEO to the space. You look back over your journey so far. What are some things that that have been key learning moments? Because myself, when I look back, and I was an entrepreneur myself, things don't always go as what we have planned. And so I'm curious to hear maybe what are some key learning moments for you so far in this journey.
I mean, resilience and tenacity is everything. I quit my job right when I had this idea because I wanted to give it 100%. And fortunately for me, I had a husband with solid, steady income that allowed me to do so, so I could focus on this gamble where I was betting on myself to solve this problem. If I looked at my investor pitches back in the day, I should be, a millionaire on a yacht right now. That exactly has not come to fruition. But, the tenacity of saying, okay, we need more and more data to make this better. We need to spend more money on machine learning to make this better. It's a marathon and not a sprint. And I think those really hard moments of realizing that this is not going to be an overnight success, that we need to commit to the long game, has been a really important learning moment. It's been a really challenging learning moment, but I'm extremely proud of what we've accomplished. I also have been really fortunate to have, a great team around me who help give the strengths and, help de-risk this venture and help it grow moving forward. And I've also learned that you should listen to your own instincts about people, about opportunities, about what the market wants. Almost every time that there was an instinct that something wasn't right, but I used my head to use logic to say it would probably be okay, my instincts were right. So I've really learned to trust myself more and more as we've gone along this venture, and still not perfect at that, but we're learning and it's starting to pay off.
And you talked about your team as you envision growth, and if things happen a portion of what you hope to, what type of roles do you foresee adding to your team down the road, Kara?
Absolutely. So, birds of a feather flock together. So in the early days, I really felt more comfortable having a team of veterinarians, scientists, and really technical people. And those are absolutely the people that we needed on this team to prove and build this product out. And of course, those technical expertises eventually turned into machine learning and software engineers. Engineering is still one of my biggest bottlenecks. I have phenomenal individuals in that role, but they are expensive and they could use help. And so our ability to generate revenue and take on more customers really is dependent on our product's ability to scale and, perform as intended. So our next team members will likely be on the engineering side.
Hmm.
Next will be those technical sales managers, territory managers who want to go out there and actually sell the product. I have been very concerned about educating our audience, creating this new category in the animal health space that I really care about the product's credibility, that I've almost like hindered my own ability to sell it because I wanted people to trust it so much. And so, I'm really looking on some more go to market business development type personnel to help get this product out there and make a splash in this industry and get people using it worldwide.
Well, I understand you got some recent funding, which is exciting. Congratulations on that. One of the things venture capitalists and private equity firms we know sometimes have an interest in the ag space, but they don't know that much about it sometimes. What have you learned, knowing that we would have some private equity venture capitalists listening to us today? What have you learned about farmers that you would like to highlight to those individuals?
I love this. And I'm so excited to answer this question because it has changed so much in just 5 years. When I first started doing this, while we were way too early to actually raise capital, I was starting to look in who invested in agriculture. And I mean, Plug and Play Ventures was up there, and most of the money was still coming from the West Coast or the East Coast. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, except for the fact that most of agriculture and most of the farmers live in the middle of the country. And we never should discredit farmers. I mean, they're literally in control of our food system, so we definitely shouldn't. But there's some deep pockets with these farmers, and they want to invest their money and make their money work for them, just like any other investor in any other industry. But when they invest, they want to resonate with the technology, they want to resonate with the team. And so I've learned that just being really forthcoming with our goals, with our technology, instead of telling them what we're going to do, ask them, like, would you use this? How would you use this? How would we price this? And really allow them to not just be an investor, but to be a strategic as well, has really allowed groups to be excited about investing in us and really want to join our team, and rather just, give us the money and wait and see if they get a return on that. So it's been really cool to see how the farmers can really be a strategic and not just an investor as we've gone through this capital raise.
Well, that is so awesome. And congratulations, by the way. It's so exciting to see AI enter the space. And it's going to be even more exciting over the next few years to see what impact organizations like yours in an AI world having an impact on agriculture. So thank you for your developed passion towards our industry. I'd like to thank you again for joining us. How would If people wanted to learn more about your business, how would you direct them?
Absolutely. So we have a website, emgenisys.co. We have social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, willing to, reach out to me directly by phone or email. But absolutely love for people to reach out versus out of any of those sources.
Well, we'll be following EmGenisys and the team as you continue to build out the business. Again, we want to thank the guests today to joining that are listening to our Industry Uncovered podcast. If people want to learn more about other podcasts within the ag industry, they can go to charlesaris.com and find the agriculture practice, and it will be there. So thank you again, Cara, and look forward to talking to you in the future.
Absolutely. Have a great day.